And the first project that I'm showing is actually the very first project that I've ever done as a professional architect. It's a project I did in the OMA London office as project architect, and it's a housing project right by Checkpoint Charlie. The site plan shows its location right by the wall, and this is what it looked like at the time when we started in the mid-80s. This was the view in the other direction. And what we were trying to do in the context of the International Building Exhibition, which was really dominated by mostly the debate of the continuity of the European city, we were trying to establish a kind of discussion which would, I guess, suggest the continuity of modernism. So the building that we proposed did not fit into the mold of the curatorship of the exhibition, and there were big disputes between Kleihues and Ilya Zengelis, actually, who was the partner I worked with most of the time. What we were trying to do is actually a building that would somehow be reflective of the contemporary condition of Berlin, and this is a section which probably explains it best. Or maybe I should have to go back for a moment. This is the Checkpoint Charlie, the crossover for Allied forces. This site was used by the American forces as a parking space and had to remain to be that, and our brief was to build some residences on top of it. So the section really shows what we did. We created a plinth, created a kind of ground floor, which contained all these military functions, created an artificial ground onto which we placed a residential building which contained all the kind of modern typologies that we know from the 60s and 70s, as like the row house, the street in the air, and the penthouse, and combined them all on top of each other, creating something which we thought was almost like a section, metaphoric section through the city. And this is the ground floor, picking up on the drive-in aspect of its function. You had to be able to drive through this ground floor with the bus, and there was a kind of little instruction booth and a few changing rooms, all to do with the military. And then on the side is the entrance into the residential. I'd like to expand a little bit on this project, which is the already aforementioned Federal Agency of the Environment in Dessau. It's an office building for approximately 1,000 people. The agency is a kind of, the institution in Germany in charge of all questions environmental. They chose to move to Dessau. They had their headquarters mostly in Berlin, but partially all over the Republic. But they chose to move their headquarters to this area because Dessau is really a region that's been suffering since the 1930s, suffering rather kind of fatal and destructive changes, culminating in a kind of situation today where unemployment is very high and the industrial basis, employment basis is completely eroded and needs to be renewed. And to move these environmental technologies, possibly environmental concerns, into this heart of the region seemed to be like a good strategy to basically contribute to the health, to the economical and social health of the region. The site is a brownfield site, and I mean you can see. I'm sorry, this is the wrong one. You can see the famous Gropius building down here. It's not very far away. That's the site. It's the site of a former gas appliance. It's a little railway station and the gas appliance factory, of course, contaminated. And rather odd in its size because it's the result of various kind of industrial considerations at the time. And the client was intent on making this a kind of demonstrative project for everything to do with sustainability. And so we tried to follow that brief, and we were trying to also create this agenda of more but with using less. And the mores that were created here are rather, to start with, rather modest. It's really to do with urban strategies. It's to do with, for example, the creation of a kind of very simple pedestrian connection across a private site. So to create a public facility, if you like, on land that, strictly speaking, is private, and to just make a simple connection from A to B for pedestrian and bicycles, thereby creating a sort of little park, if you like, a sort of address as well, a sort of green address for the office. Or it's to do with an internal organization which is trying to take into account things like orientation. If you are moving around in a building that has 1,000 people, it's not easy to find your way, and also the question in what sort of space do you move while you are trying to get to the office that you want to be at. It's also something to do with convention, because the office buildings for civil functions in Germany are highly regulated. It's all repetitive, small units, and how to break that mold without creating or trying to avoid a kind of Kafkaesque corridor situation and so on were kind of issues which we were considering very much when we were trying to make the kind of the basic concept of the building.